So the big announcement that the Rams have been waiting for, well, it finally happened today.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. While you're there, why don't you click that subscribe button right now, and then everybody wins, right? Everybody gets their Rams content every single day right here on Locked On Rams. My name is Travis Rogers. I host the Rams pregame show, their halftime show, and their postgame show on their flagship station, ESPN 710, right here in Los Angeles, and have been doing it since the Rams came back to LA way back in 2016. We're going to get into the big announcement today that I think we all knew was going to come eventually, but it finally happened. Plus, I want to talk about the Rams moving on from one of their more popular players, their longest tenured Ram, punter Johnny Hekker. That's coming up in a little bit. And I want to talk about some moves that were made in the division and Jalen Ramsey's response to some of those along the way. So we got a lot to get to here on Locked On Rams. Make sure that you make us a part of your day every single day. And don't forget Locked On Rams on YouTube as well. Click subscribe while you are there. Let's get right to it, right? The big announcement. Andrew Whitworth is retiring from the NFL. 16-season career. A handful of All-Pros, a handful of Pro Bowl berths, and of course, culminating with a Super Bowl championship just about a month or so ago at SoFi Stadium when the Rams beat the Cincinnati Bengals. So an incredible way to walk off into the sunset. Perfect, right? This is the fairy tale ending that so few athletes actually get to have. I'm going to spend my entire career working towards a goal, put together an amazing resume. Andrew Whitworth's resume is about as good as you're going to find. But quite honestly, spent the vast majority of his career on a bad team. He was in Cincinnati for the first part of his career. First 11 seasons of his career were in Cincinnati. They were not a good football team for the vast majority of the time that he was there. He comes to LA and he finds success. All 5 years that Andrew Whitworth was a member of the Rams, they had a winning record. 4 of those times they went to the playoffs. 2 of those times they went to the Super Bowl. And like I mentioned a second ago, they finally punched their ticket, won a Super Bowl against his old team, the Cincinnati Bengals, in Super Bowl 56, just about a month or so ago. That is not how most athletes, right? They spend their whole careers, they never get to a Super Bowl. Or they do get to a Super Bowl, but it happens, maybe in the early part of their career, maybe in the middle part, or they do get to taste that ultimate victory at one point, and they decide that they want to go in a different direction. They want to go and chase some money. Maybe they want to kind of run it back one more year. Andrew Whitworth did the thing that you so very rarely see: a championship. Peace out. We'll see you down the road. I'm going to go do something and be very, very successful at it, because we know that Andrew Whitworth is an incredibly smart guy. Those are the football accolades. He may or may not be a Hall of Famer. If I'm being completely objective and taking my emotions out of it, because I'm a big fan of his and I hope that it happens for him, he's probably a borderline Hall of Fame candidate, right? He may or may not get in. He's probably, if he is going to get in, one of those guys that might have to wait a little bit. We'll see. Time will tell on how that shakes itself out. That's the football part of it. The thing that I think is the most interesting part of his career, and particularly the part of his career that he spent here in Los Angeles, is the way that he was able to impact the city, the way that he was able to impact teammates, both offensive linemen and non-offensive linemen, and just the way that he carried himself as a member of the Rams organization for the last 5 years. There was not a person that was more solid than Andrew Whitworth over the last half decade. Just did not exist really in this entire city in sports. There are a lot of good players. Andrew Whitworth is among the good players. There are a lot of good guys in whether it's in the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA. There's a lot of good players, a lot of good guys. But you very rarely get somebody that is both of these things and goes out of their way to be both of these things. There are a lot of stuff that's happened in this city since Andrew Whitworth came here. We had those terrible wildfires near where Andrew Whitworth and the Rams have their training facility. We had that just unbelievably unspeakable shooting in the Thousand Oaks area, I should say, when the Rams were getting ready to play a game. Andrew Whitworth was heavily involved in making sure that people were taken care of in both of those situations, through time, through money, through donations, through just his presence and kind of shepherding the team through some very dark times. let's talk about the football part of it too. Not just his impact in the community and schools and everything. The Walter Payton Man of the Year award that he just won. Hey, by the way, how about that? Super Bowl championship, Walter Payton Man of the Year award, retirement, see you later. It's a pretty good way to walk off into the next chapter of your life for sure. But this was somebody that had an impact on every offensive lineman that came through that building, every single one. That may not be a huge surprise. He's a guy, like I mentioned, multiple Pro Bowls, all pro player, a guy first team all NFL, and he's one of those guys. So you would be a fool not to listen to what he says. You would be a fool not to follow the way that he gets his body ready. Somebody that played left tackle in the NFL in the Super Bowl at 40 years old, he probably knows a thing or two about taking care of himself. So that makes a lot of sense. If you're somebody, if you're Joe Noteboom, why wouldn't you take notes from him? And he did. And he's set up for success to take over that role for the team next year. That's good news. But it's not just the guys in the offensive line room. It's not just guys on the offensive side of the ball. It's everybody in that organization. He set a tone that permeated the entire building. Look, Aaron Donald's the best player on the team. Nobody is ever going to dispute that. He is just an extraordinary player, and he's a very good leader, and he's become more vocal as a leader the longer he's been in this league. But he's generally speaking a pretty quiet guy. He's going to let his actions do the talking for him. He's not going to be a guy that is going to take on that role, the way that some other guys might. And that's fine. That's not necessarily what he has to do. But Andrew Whitworth embraced it. Andrew Whitworth embodied that role for the Rams, and he will be missed. I don't know what the next chapter of his life is. I wouldn't be surprised if it involves football, whether it's coaching football, whether it's broadcasting football, whether it's being around it. But he just has such an unbelievable way about him, even if it has nothing to do with football. He's going to be remarkable in whatever it is he goes on for. I am very sad to see him go, but very excited to see what he brings to the next part of his life. Here's the other thing, too. I'm really interested to see who picks up the mantle, the leadership mantle for this team moving forward. This is somebody that is, in his mid to late 30s during his tenure here in LA. He's leading the group in sprints. He's leading the group in after camp hours when they're at UC Irvine getting ready for the season. The oldest, arguably one of the most accomplished guy on the team is doing the most, working the hardest. That sets a tone that everyone else has to get to. Aaron Donald is the hardest working guy on the team as well. He will set the tone defensively, but offensively, you wonder what that's going to go to. You wonder who decides to pick up the mantle for that, leading them into the next generation of Rams offensive linemen. The good news is they've got Joe Noteboom. He can slide in and handle the football part, I think, pretty seamlessly. The rest of it, I think it's going to be incumbent on the entire Rams unit offensively, offensive line in particular, to try to find a way to pick up some of that leadership slack, because this is not just one of the great leaders on the Rams, but one of the great leaders in all of the NFL. So congratulations to him on his retirement, and what an unbelievable way to walk off into the sunset. All right, another guy that will not be back with the Rams next year, Johnny Hekker. We'll talk about that coming up in just a little bit, but not before I tell you about Built Bars, right? You like to snack? Look at my face. I like to snack too, right? It's not a huge surprise that we all make some bad choices along the way about some of the food that we're making. This is why you got to put some Built Bars into the rotation. It can be hard to stay on track for a long time, making a bunch of good decisions with your eating. But Built Bar, they're going to make those decisions for you. They're going to be that thing you can have in your desk, in your backpack, in your car, wherever it is that you tend to have that little snack break along the way. Low calorie, high protein Built Bars. How about this? 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. That is a better choice than you're going to make with just about anything else, especially if you're comparing it to candy bars and things like that. 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, dozens of net carbs. You don't want that. And how about this? It tastes good. It doesn't feel like you have to do something. You're doing something that happens to be good for you as well. They always worry about the taste first. They'll take care of how to do the nutritional part next. I don't know how they do it. They know how to do it. And that's why you got to go to built.com. Use that promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off of your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Okay, so Johnny Hekker. The Rams released Johnny Hekker this week, earlier today. He's the longest tenured Ram, or he was the longest tenured Ram. It's really interesting, and I'm sure that somebody somewhere, but I've never really seen this happen before. I'm having a hard time remembering a situation like this. Try to go back to what it was like when the Rams came back to Southern California back in 2016, when they made the announcement they were going to leave St. Louis, they were going to come back to LA. Let's be honest, it was kind of the response was tepid at best. There are people like me, roughly my age, who grew up with the Rams, who love the Rams, who were, oh, cool, the Rams are back, I'm all in. For a lot of people, it was kind of, who are these guys? I don't know who these guys are. These guys, they were bad too. They weren't a very good team. So they come in, and they are kind of anonymous in the city. There's not an emotional connection. That this LA is not a market where if you just show up, we're going to love you right away. This isn't Cleveland that they can leave for 20 years and come back and everybody's fired up. You're going to have to earn our love and our respect. That's kind of how we do it. We've talked about it. Our currency is in not caring, not necessarily in being the most diehard people in the world as far as that kind of stuff goes. Once you got us forever. Go ask the Lakers, go ask the Dodgers, go ask USC football. Once you got us, but you're going to have to earn it along the way. So when they get here, it's kind of an interesting situation. It's not a good team, and it's not filled with star players, at least not at that point, right? Or at least not star players that we as a group, as fans, were terribly familiar with. Aaron Donald was on the team and was very, very good, but he's pretty quiet. He's a defensive tackle. He was not on a good team, so you weren't seeing him in the playoffs a lot. And you came over, you're like, oh, yeah, Aaron Donald's the guy that gets a bunch of sacks and one of the best defensive players, but didn't say a whole lot. Okay, fine, whatever. Todd Gurley is coming off of an injury and coming off of half of a season where he was a pretty good player. So you're thinking, okay, maybe Todd Gurley will be a guy that kind of connects with people, and he did. But Todd Gurley, again, not a particularly talkative guy, pretty quiet guy. He's a very, very good football player, and certainly for the Rams for a few years, he was better than very, very good. He was one of the best in the league. But again, not somebody that necessarily connected with a whole lot of people along the way. Who else came aboard? It was Jared Goff. Jared Goff, the number one pick in the draft. And so you'd think, okay, it's quarterback. It's the number one pick in the draft. He's from California, Northern California. But these all pieces kind of all fit together. And I don't mean this disrespectfully at all, but Jared Goff does not have that personality that draws people in, that makes people just incredibly enthusiastic about his presence. And part of it is he was young, he was inexperienced, and he too had not come from a program where there's a bunch of winning happening and all those sorts of things. And he was brand new in the NFL. And, oh, by the way, he didn't play right out of the chute. Case Keenum was actually the starting quarterback. So there's this vacuum of who's going to be the guy to try to sell this team to the community. You know who filled the vacuum? Johnny Hekker. When the team first came here, Johnny Hekker was the guy that got the radio show. Johnny Hekker was the guy that would go on the radio shows. Johnny Hekker was the guy that would do post-game media. Johnny Hekker was the guy that would come over and chit-chat during training camp and pop on. You'd see him on TV. He was funny. He was glib. He was talkative. He kind of understood the idea of going through and talking about what it means to be an LA Ram. And, oh, by the way, he was an all-pro. He was the best guy at his position in the whole league. Look, I know it's been a minute. I know it's been 5 years. But try to put yourself back in the Jeff Fisher era, especially that first year here in LA. Your only hope to score points was 3 and out on offense, have Johnny Hekker boom it inside the 5-yard line, drop it right in there, and hope Aaron Donald hits somebody and pops the ball out, and you only have to drive it 5 or 6 yards. That was the Rams offense, okay? Sorry to say it, but it was true. That's how it went. So Johnny Hekker was like an integral part of what they were doing offensively. They were going to let Case Keenum throw it around. They were going to let Jared Goff throw it around. Let's pin him deep with Johnny Hekker, and let's try to win the game with our defense. And the handful of games that they did win, that's kind of how they won them. It's also why they went 4-12 that first year. But it was interesting to see that Johnny Hekker was kind of the guy that was front and center because, let's be honest, he's the punter. It's not the sexiest position in the world. But he carried the weight of that incredibly well. I got a chance to interview him a few times. I got a chance to be out at training camp and chit-chat with him a few times along the way. Very charismatic guy, very funny, very glib, and understood kind of, hey, look, not only am I a member of this team, not only do I, play on an NFL team, but I got to kind of sell this to these people. I got to kind of get people excited about this. And if I'm being perfectly honest, there weren't a ton of guys that were trying to do that. He was, and he was pretty good at it. Now, you're not going to capture people the way that the quarterback might, or the way if all of a sudden, if Aaron Donald and the Rams showed up today, right? fresh off of a Super Bowl victory, and Aaron Donald's multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year. He's the best defensive player of his era. He might be the best defensive player of all time. Everybody would we would gravitate towards him. Everybody would obviously gravitate towards Cooper Kupp because he's fantastic. You'd gravitate towards Matthew Stafford because he does have that radiance that comes along with being in the NFL a long time and being a quarterback, and now he's a Super Bowl champion. That would make sense. Jalen Ramsey, Odell Beckham Jr., these are guys that are superstars, right? None of these guys were here, or none of them had achieved what they've achieved at this point to kind of capture everybody's imagination. And that's where Johnny Hekker came in. He'll find a job. He's still a very good punter. He did not have the best year of his career, but when they made that announcement that they had released him and he was going to go on to somewhere else, it kind of hit me in a certain way, in a weird way for a punter like that, right? Because he was kind of the first guy to come into LA and say, hey, we're back and here we are. And believe it or not, I'm one of the best players on this team. I am an all-pro player, and let's talk about the Rams a little bit. And I'll always be grateful to him for that along the way. So Johnny Hekker, happy trails to you wherever you'll wind up. I'm sure he will be a good addition to wherever he goes. Not the best year he ever had with the Rams in this last season, but he was very good at the end of the year and did a good job there. And I'm going to do it. I'm not even going to mention the other thing that happened in the Super Bowl. So we will just keep it moving. All right, coming up next, I want to talk about some of the moves that are being made in the division, in particular, something that Arizona didn't do, and Jalen Ramsey's response to it. That's coming up in just a sec. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Locked On NFL. You know how much I appreciate you making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day. Make sure you're following Locked On NFL as well. Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NFL every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It too, just like Locked On Rams, is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Okay. So free agency is here. Guys are moving around. Guys are doing what they do. They're chasing money. Who wouldn't, right? No disrespect there. I completely get it. I would be doing the exact same thing if I were in the same situation. And guys are moving. Christian Kirk is among the guys that have moved. Christian Kirk is on his way to Jacksonville. He's going to get $72 million. Let me say that again. Christian Kirk, formerly of the Arizona Cardinals, currently of the Jacksonville Jaguars, is going to get $72 million. The deal could go up to as high as $84 million. That means it could be a $21 million a year deal. Okay, that would be third among all NFL wide receivers. Let me say it one more time in case maybe you're not kind of getting where I'm headed with this. Christian Kirk, who has never had a 1,000-yard receiving season, is the third highest paid player at his position in the NFL. That Christian Kirk. Okay, cool. Good for you. And I'm sure that the Jags are the ones that did it. Way to go, fellas. You guys are always on top of things. So let me know how that works out for you. Jalen Ramsey, I think, was pretty funny about this. Darius Slay tweeted out, I said, I need to start working on my routes. Backpedaling is not it no more. Okay. And he put the laughing, crying emoji. Jalen Ramsey responded to that and wrote, either that or our prices just went up. How are we locking down guys who get paid more than us? Crying face emoji. It's all blessings though. And then he has the prayer hands in there. Okay. Both Darius Slay and Jalen Ramsey are not wrong. Okay. Look, there's a couple of different layers to this entire thing. Number one, be very happy you're not a Jacksonville Jaguar fan. Maybe you are. You're listening to this podcast. I don't know. If you are, great. Welcome. Become a Rams fan, because giving $72 million to Christian Kirk is why the Jags are the Jags. Giving the money to guys like Jalen Ramsey, giving the money to guys like Aaron Donald, giving the money to guys like Matthew Stafford, giving the money to guys like Von Miller and Odell Beckham Jr. and they're going to give it to Cooper Kupp before too long. This is how you go and do things. Find guys that have proven they're good players in the NFL, excellent players, all pro players, Pro Bowl type of players, okay? Christian Kirk is a fine player. I don't mean this to be a Christian Kirk is a bum rant. What I'm telling you is be happy that your team realizes there are some things you can live without. Be happy that your team realizes the value of star players, that they're willing to go get guys like that, like Ramsey, like Stafford, like Donald, and make things happen with the guys that have proven it, because he's right. And Ramsey's 100% right. Their price will go up. If the idea is, wait, you're telling me that Christian Kirk is going to get $21 million a year, and every time he plays against me, he doesn't catch 3 passes. What are we talking about here? I'll take some of that money. That's going to happen. These, the money goes around. There are four. Here's how you know your team's doing a good job. You pay these guys. You pay the quarterback. You pay the guy that protects the quarterback, the left tackle, right? You pay the guy that goes and gets the quarterback. That would be Aaron Donald. And you pay the guy that catches the touchdowns, and you pay the guy that prevents the guy from catching the touchdowns. What is that? That's 4 or 5 different spots. All right. But you better make sure that they're difference makers. You better make sure that there's nothing you can do to stop the guy. Do you think that there's anything that any defensive back is going to do against Cooper Kupp that's going to erase him? No, not really. He's going to find a way to get his. That's what he's been doing. He's been really good at that. Christian Kirk gets erased occasionally. Jalen Ramsey does the erasing for a lot of different guys along the way. Darius Slay, kind of the same deal, right? These are the deals. It's not so much the money that goes, it's who's giving them the money. And I thought that it was very, very funny that Slay, that Ramsey both responded the way that they did, because that was one of those deals you're like, Jacksonville, come on, man. Really? Really? Again, we don't even know if Trevor Lawrence is a good player or not yet. It's impossible to tell, because the last guy you hired to be your head coach was so over his skis that after about 2 weeks on the job, everybody said, oh, this is going to be a disaster. Okay, now they've got a new coach. Old Herb is down the road doing whatever it is that he's going to go do next. Probably coach college football and be very, very good at it. But the guys that are still kind of around and making the highest level decisions are still kind of the same guys. I know that Doug Peterson has some juice in there, and he's going to help people go through the process along the way. But Jacksonville, good luck with that. And I'm just happy that A, Jalen Ramsey has a sense of humor, that B, he's on the Rams, and C, that they're going to have to wait a little while before they have to crack open their wallet again to pay that next guy. Good luck, Jacksonville. Way to go, Jalen Ramsey, on what you had to say about the entire thing. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Rams. Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL corner Eric Crocker are going to bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front office. It too is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Happy trails, Andrew Whitworth. Happy trails, Johnny Hekker. Whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.